Good afternoon, everybody. It's Isaac reporting from somewhere in the United Kingdom. And it is Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. Friday, May 29th, 2020. All right? May 29th, 2020. I'll wait for some folks to show up and I'll adjust my lighting in the meantime. There we go. It's a little bit less harsh. Anybody out there? Yes, there's somebody out there. Hi, David. Wait for a few more people to see if anyone else is going to join the party this afternoon. So this is different. I had to do a Friday because I got busy with clients yesterday, and I had to put off the 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock today because I had clients. This is a good thing. From one perspective, it's a good thing. Anyway, welcome aboard to another edition of Coffee Break Live Update. And today's episode 8, is I'm Mad as Hell. I'll have to explain that and give you a little background in case you weren't around in 1976 when a very amazing film came out that starred Faye Dunaway called Network. And it was written, conceived and written and produced by a guy named Paddy Chayefsky. So, enough of that. Basically, it's the story of a television network, a lesser-known television network in the United States, not NBC, ABC, or CBC. It is about a fictitious network that basically kind of finds its gold mine through the rantings and ravings and musing of somebody on their news staff, on their nightly news staff, who goes a little out there, starts hearing voices, starts having visions. And he reports the news as it really is. He reports the world as he sees it, as it really is. And this, of course, equates into major ratings for this network, this fictitious network. And in the end, it's all about the ratings. It's all about creating the response they want from the audience to participate. It isn't about Howard's message. He's the mad prophet of the airwaves. It's not about his madness. It's not about his revelatory perspectives. It's about ratings. It's about money, because this network get bought out by a corporation, and the corporation wants to of course compete with the big boys. So that's all aside. What we're talking about here is that what is going on in the media, whether it's the COVID-19 thing, or it's FIVEG, or it's what's going on in Minnesota right now, in Minneapolis, it's all a bit crazy and it's all a bit nuts, and everybody's wondering, how do I get off of this merry-go-round called life on planet Earth in the first half of 2020? Basically, you don't get to get off, neither do I, and it would be nice if we could all go off to some kind of tropical island and start growing papayas and mangoes and hanging around on the beach and telling stories and going fishing and swimming and all the rest of it. I'd love if we could do that. That'd be great. But that's not right now. So today is interesting. Very, very interesting time that we live in. And this morning there were pictures and images about the riots in Minneapolis. And this seems to be on everybody's focus at the moment. And so I understand that. And somebody said, well, I hope it doesn't get any worse. However, it may just, before it gets better, if we want to call better, is everybody going back and keeping their head down and doing what they're supposed to do. I don't think that's going to happen for a number of reasons. Number one, because of the big Pluto-Saturn conjunctions and aspects with Jupiter and so forth this year and next. What's going on this decade in terms of the long view. So since it's been about 3 or 4 episodes since I mentioned much about astrology at all, I'd like to mention that what's happening now is a preview of coming attractions in a way. I would rather be wrong about that, but since astrology reflects what's going on in human collective consciousness, as it well does for your own individual life, it's important to have the ability to look forward, to see what trends may develop, and to report that to whoever might be listening. Hello everybody, thank you for joining. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might find yourself. It's late afternoon here, around 4 p.m. in the UK. This is episode 8. I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore, which is a direct quote from that movie I was mentioning just a little bit ago, the movie Network from 1976. So I'm not Howard Beale, but believe you me, I can get just as righteous as he did about certain things, especially things involving injustice or cruelty, or just plain ignorance and stupidity. Mad world. You're right, Debbie. You know what? That was another movie title from almost the same era. It's a mad world. All-star cast, very funny, also had a great message about everybody climbing over each other's backs and doing each other dirty deals and stabbing each other in their back so they could all get a chest of riches at the bottom of a W-shaped palm trees. Anyway, long story. Here's the deal. Chiron and Mars are like seemingly minor bit players in everything else that's going on. Venus is retrograde, as everybody's been talking about, and Venus is going to come up, made its contact with Neptune, now it's going backwards in the sky, going all the way back to 5 Gemini. Jupiter is going backwards, Pluto is going backwards, Saturn is going backwards. It's like we're all going backwards. Everything's kind of wonky. The only thing moving forwards was Mercury, and it got into Cancer recently. Sun moving forwards, as always. It's at 8 degrees Gemini today. The nodes of the moon, however, go backwards. So they're at 29 degrees of Sag and Gemini. Not much to report there, except that it's at the 29th degree. Life is no gas comedy for fools. Everybody's coming up with good responses here in the comments. I'm happy to report. Now here's what preview of coming attractions means in terms of like the Minneapolis riots or the long-standing unfolding horror that's going on between Black America and white America or whatever. And it's amazing how some people are seeing this stuff for what it is and a lot of people are not. Recently there was a quote by Robert Kennedy, and this is from somebody's post I just spotted a few minutes before going live today. This is from Robert Kennedy. At the quarantine's outset, I warned that despots and billionaires would leverage the crisis to ratchet up surveillance and authoritarian control. They would transform America into a national security state. And the thing about what's interesting about that is that, and I've known this for a long time, is that the tech companies are salivating over the security surveillance idea. And they have been for a long time. So if you want a parallel to 9/11, when the moon went out of bounds, and when the moon goes, any planet goes out of bounds, it's further higher on the apogee of the planet, in relationship to the planet, than the Tropic of Capricorn, which surrounds the world at a latitude, and the Tropic of Cancer. So the moon goes out of bounds a few days before September 11th, 2001. Same thing happened this year in January. Same thing. The other thing is that we have a Saturn-Pluto conjunction happening in January this year. In 2001, it was a Pluto-Saturn opposition. Okay, so opposing together. Both of those positions or aspects are very intense. They create intensity, they create focus, they create things happen, all right? Sorry if it's jarring around, I shouldn't lean on the desk. So in this news article, or in this statement by Robert Kennedy, between March 18th and May 19th, the combined net worth of these people grew by $75.5 billion. Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Warren Buffett, and Larry Ellison. According to Forbes data, 630 U.S. billionaires jumped up net value $434 billion to a total aggregate wealth of $2,948 billion. So essentially, the companies that we depend on, that we are dependent on, let me make no illusion about that, unless you decide to go completely off grid, get rid of your mobile phones, get rid of your internet connection, your ISP, you are dependent on Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon, etc. All right? And so we have to understand that the tech titans, the gods of Silicon Valley, are just chomping at the bit for another opportunity to create even more surveillance, because that's what they specialize in. I'm going to be very honest. I'm going to be like Howard Beale on network and say, I want you to go over to your TV and I want you to turn it off and I want you to go to your window and open your window and stick your head out and yell at the top of your lungs, I'm as mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. Because this is the only thing they're going to listen to. This may sound very draconian, but it is the only thing they will listen to. When you take food away from the beast, it starves. In this case, the food is attention, your resources, your personal data, and money. All right. So if they want this, they got in bed. Look, Google got in bed with CIA, NSA, and all of those agencies in 2001. I have good information that they got in bed, the telecoms industry got in bed with the security establishment of the United States back in the 1960s. All right. And they have, you know, whatever they say up front about, oh, your data is private, you're completely protected, there's no sharing going, don't believe it. Don't believe it for one moment, because these companies live or die based on the surveillance that they conduct. Personally, now it's also the state. Everybody was afraid of the state in 2000 after the war and terror began. Everybody was afraid of the state, but nobody looked at Google, nobody looked at Facebook, nobody looked at Amazon. No, they're not going to do that. They would never do that. That's what they live off of. They are predators. They are predatory. This is the whole problem with capitalism as a philosophy or an ideology, and it's most how the world has operated for the last 10,000 years is predation. There's a whole other backstory to that. There's players behind the scene, but I'm not going there right now. So let's look at what's going forward with, or what we can possibly expect what's going forward in the months ahead. So as I mentioned in a comment to somebody about how terrible the Minneapolis riots are and everything, it is like a blip compared to the long-term violence that has been going on against people of color and race for a long, long time. Whether it's the United States, the United Kingdom, any country in the world right now, everybody's got a racism problem. I don't care who you are and where you come from. The UK's whole Brexit strategy was based on racism. The racism card was the big card in Brexit. The police agencies over here have, basically, here it's more subtle in the UK. It's not as overt as it is in the US. We do it politely. We do it hidden. We do it very surreptitiously, so we don't offend anybody, I guess, or something, or don't we want to look like we're not racist, but in actuality, most of the white Anglo-Saxon British public is secretly or quietly racist to the point where they don't even recognize they're being racist. That's how subtle it is. Okay, so that aside, we go forward in the astrological calendar, trying to make sense out of what's going on. 1 month from today, we have a Jupiter-Pluto conjunction retrograde at 24 degrees of Capricorn. That's a big one, all on its own. We also get the Sun advancing to 8 degrees of Cancer. We also get the Mars advancing into 0 degrees of Aries. This is the big story. This is the big story. And that is really important to recognize. Mars, or the so-called small bit players, are going to make the biggest waves between the end of June and the end of this year. Mars itself in Aries is going to stay in Aries that whole period of time, which is rather unusual. So it's going to go forward in Aries, it's going to retrograde back in Aries, and it's going to go forward again and eventually leave Aries and move into Taurus, where it'll end up joining up with Uranus next year. Boy, do we have exciting times then. So here it is with the Mars. During these 3 cycles that happen, the forward motion, which is the revealing or the trigger. So look for things to be interesting between June 28th and roughly the middle of August. I call that something's going to give. It might happen on those dates, or it might happen slightly before or slightly after, roughly. But look for something as a trigger, or as a revelation, or as a revealing. Okay, a can opener is another way to think about it. Then we have the retrograde cycle in the fall for a bit, and then it goes forward again. But every one of those points, Mars is going to make a hard 90-degree square or hard angle to Jupiter and to Pluto, both in Capricorn. So, and eventually it will also square Saturn toward the end of the year. So, and Jupiter again. So we have these Mars things, and Mars and Aries are, you know, together, man. They're the warrior. They're all about personal survival. They're all about personal niche. They are the reptilian brain personified. It's like, you know, use it or lose it. You know, fight for your life, guys. You know, fight for your consciousness, fight for your heart, fight for your right to be who you are. Now, I'm talking about fisticuffs. I'm not talking about taking up weapons or anything like that. I'm talking about being able to take this energy and consciously use it to establish a sense of individuation and collective consciousness, so that you're seeing everybody as also yourself. All right. The weapon here is your mind and your soul. The weapon of sovereignty, the weapon of individuation, the weapon of spirit, if you will, to defend your right to be who you are, and to your own thoughts, to your own perspectives, to everybody else's as well. So you would defend that right for another person. You would defend life. You would defend the planet against abuse. You would defend somebody else against abuse. Why not nature? So you have to expand this. The Mars and Aries thing is going to be looking for personal survival. I have to survive. I don't care about anybody else. You know, I got to survive. No. You know, I can't look around and see who else is getting knocked over. I've got to take care of me. It's, you know, all about number one. That isn't going to work. And this is why the Mars transits in relationship to the Pluto-Saturn collective experience in Capricorn is going to be about, how do we get through this together? How do we take action that is not just, you know, throwing Molotov cocktails and throwing firebombs and all that stuff? How do we get through this together? All right. But also not sitting back and continually being abused and condoning it or enabling it. Okay, so when authority does what it does in the name of the law, as it has been doing in the United States now for years, if not decades and decades, to people of color, then you have to say this is a systemic issue. It's not just individuals acting out based on their conditioning or their belief system. This is a systemic issue. And you have, like the schoolyard you grew up in, bullies who will come over and think that they can take advantage of you because you have some sort of weakness of character they sense, or some sort of, you know, weakness of will, or the ability to will something, or to stand up for something. They will detect that at an unconscious level and look to find a way in. Gaslighters do it, psychopaths do it, sociopaths do it, narcissists do it. This is no different. Okay, so when we look at the situation here, it's like this is our 9/11 happening all over again. This is our choice point, and we need to be able, between now and the end of June, see where it is we stand with ourselves and where we stand with each other. Okay, so Mars is going to call on you to be the warrior, to really stand up and be heard, be seen, and not shrink, not blend in with the crowd. And just like, I want everybody to get along. Yeah, you do. Sure, that's the Aries polarity, Libra. I just want everybody to get along. I want to be the mediator. But Mars in Aries is not going to let you wiggle out of being a fence sitter. You cannot just be a fence sitter. There's an old, I think it was General Zapata who fought in the Mexican Revolution, who said, you know, either you stand for something or you end up serving on your knees. And I think this is what everybody's saying. It's like, it's not just about black men. It's not just about people of color that are abused and taken advantage of and predated here. It's everybody. It's systemic. We have to decide what kind of world we want to face, what kind of future we want to face. So here we have, the perfect opportunity arriving at the end of June to see where we want to go, how we want to do this. So don't wait for some established leader or expert to say, hey, I'm going to lead the way. You decide, Mars and Aries, you decide how you're going to lead, where you're going to lead from, what your core values are, your core beliefs. And then find ways that can work, or you can work that with other people. In your local space, in your local community. Don't try to, don't be Howard. Howard got assassinated at the end of Network, the movie Network. He got killed off because it was good for ratings. Some people will do that. Some people will put their lives and their livelihood and their life and limb on the line for something they believe in, especially against injustice. And I admire that. And if I had to do it, I would do the same. Only you can know that point. Only you can know that boundary when it's time to cross it. I can't tell you. No one can tell you. This is the beauty of the gift of free will we have. So between now and then, between where we are today and where we're going to over the next few weeks, is really kind of a time of reflection and introspection and listening and observing and deciding which side of the fence you're going to be on. Because if you stay on the top of the fence, you're going to eventually get knocked off. That's what I usually have seen in my life. When I don't make a decision about something or somebody else is going to make it for you. All right? So that's just the way life works, The other issue that arises a lot of the time is that if you don't commit to anything for a long time, then you end up becoming very, very angry at yourself for not doing something. I'm sorry to do this, but I have somebody at the door. Oh, never mind. Somebody's taking care of it. So ultimately, the chart is saying, the stars, the signs, the planets are all saying, we are ripening to a particular choice point. We're ripening to it over the next 30 days. What are we going to do with it? How do we want it to show up? What are we going to use that energy for, that Mars in energy for, to push through the top-down, overbearing, predatory, systemic ideology that we have allowed ourselves. Nobody did it without permission, in a sense, tacit or otherwise, allowed ourselves to accept. So what will you accept? What will I accept? A lot of people I know are thinking of leaving Facebook entirely. I know that seems like suicide in a way to some folks. Or I'm thinking of God, what if I got a dumb phone? I couldn't even use it to go and talk like this. I'm looking at options. I'm looking at options to this. I'm looking at options that will might replace something like this. I don't know. But I will make those decisions before my upcoming birthday on June 30th. I can tell you that, because this Mars in Aries is going to be sitting right on a major point in my chart saying, okay, how are you going to go forward from here? How are you going to play? And that's not just me. That's all of us. All right? That's all of us. This is a message from headquarters. So maybe it's time for us, to celebrate the Howard Beales in our midst, who are calling things out, pulling back the veil like Toto did in Wizard of Oz, revealing the Wizard of Oz for being the fraud that he actually is. And that takes courage. That takes heart. That takes a willingness to do what nobody else seems to be doing. And that's to stand up, go forward, and pull the curtain back and say, look, this is what we're afraid of? House of Cards, paper tigers. We've allowed it to go on for too long. because it only continues by our permission, by our acquiescence. Does it go on? Does it continue? I no longer choose to acquiesce. So, I may hang up from this and go open the door, the window, and start yelling, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. Or throw the TV out the window or something like that. But you didn't come here to be controlled or told how to live. Nobody did. But it was assumed that that's what you're supposed to do. And you know what happens when we assume things. Okay. So my message for today is, don't push any panic buttons right now. No reason to. Do the work. Find those things inside of you, those judgments, or those perceptions, or those ideologies, or those beliefs that do not set with your core values, that do not set with spirit, that do not set with things of the heart, and work on weeding those out or dealing with them. Don't project them on the situation in Minneapolis or anywhere else and say, well, this is my responsibility. I've got to heal that part inside of me that's evidencing or manifesting itself in the outer realm. No, we're not all responsible for that, not every single one of us, for holding those concepts or beliefs that create that situation. I certainly don't want to be thinking I'm going to identify with a poor human being who's in a position of that policeman doing what he did to that man on the paving. I can't imagine what goes through the minds of an individual like that. I can't connect to it. It seems inhuman. So why would you want to take responsibility for that when you know better, when you and I know better, and that we would never do that? We would never inflict that on somebody else, because we know what it would feel like if it was inflicted on us without our say-so or permission. So it's about respect. Bottom line, it's about respect. So it's really important to recognize that boundaries go with sovereignty, and sovereignty has to be done with love as well as firmness. And that is the bottom line with Mars. So we elevate Mars from being the survival-oriented warrior to becoming the divine warrior. Okay? Let's see if we can move with that. There's a lot of other things to share and a lot of other things to discuss, but it's important to recognize that right now I'll be sharing some stuff on my timeline about how to deal with the surveillance, how to deal with the online thing, okay, the online thing, because it is artificial. And one last note about that, about artificial AI, is this avatar thing that's popped up on Facebook. Don't buy into it. It's gimmicky, it's cute and everything, because it attracts you to do that, just like the Pokemon craze did in 2015. It is nothing more than a way to groom people and condition people to accept a digital version of themselves and making that better. So, I hate to rain on anybody's parade, but it's so blatant, and they don't have your best interests in heart, and don't continue thinking that they do, because they're making money hand over fist every second you're on this platform. Okay? So you have to go inside, do the due diligence, and this time of reflection on the next 4 weeks. What action shall I take? Will I stay part of the machine, or will I claim my humanity in full and realize and trust that there are other ways for us to commune together? There are other ways that we can find to connect with one another, and go from there. Okay? All right. So that's my message for today. Allow your creative anger or your creative frustration or your primal scream to come out, and then do something creative with it. Do something of value that will help you to be in a better place, but also help somebody else who may be in trouble, because I'm getting a lot of people coming to me right now who are in trouble. Nothing makes sense anymore. Nothing at all. And in a way, that's what needs to happen right now. People questioning things. Doesn't make sense. then why should we continue doing what doesn't make sense? Much love to you all. Blessings on your journey. Speak to you next Tuesday. I look forward to it. Same bat channel, same bat time. And be real. Be a spirit. Don't be no ghost. Ciao.